The invisible trafficking, how systems fail our most vulnerable children every day in America. We tell ourselves a comforting lie. We believe our systems protect children. We sleep better thinking institutions shield the vulnerable. But what if the very systems designed to safeguard our youth are sometimes the ones trafficking them? I recently had the privilege of interviewing Simona Bearcub, a remarkable California foster care trafficking survivor and Afro-Indigenous advocate whose courage and wisdom have transformed how we understand child protection in this country. Her lived experience doesn't just add to the conversation, it fundamentally reshapes it. Through her tireless advocacy, she has forced institutions to confront their complicity and created pathways for countless survivors to reclaim their voices and their power. 50,000 children. That's how many youth are currently in California's foster care system alone. 50,000 lives, 50,000 futures, 50,000 children whose safety depends entirely on the decisions of strangers. Let that number sink in for a moment. When we talk about human trafficking, our minds conjure dramatic images. Children snatched from shopping malls, teenagers lured by strangers online. These narratives dominate our news cycles and policy discussions. But Simona Bearcup's testimony exposed a more insidious reality: trafficking that happens by design within systems supposedly built to protect. The system protects kids in foster care. This is the comforting myth Simona Bearcub rejects. From her lived experience as a California foster care trafficking survivor and Afro-Indigenous woman, she was placed by design into unsafe homes, conditions that meet the definition of trafficking, and had to advocate for her own safety and survival at every turn. This isn't just her story. This is a systemic failure that repeats itself thousands of times across our country every day. When placement, oversight, and accountability fail, the foster system can reproduce the same exploitation it claims to stop, particularly for Black and Indigenous children who face compounded bias and invisibility. The data is clear, the testimonies are consistent, the pattern is undeniable. But here's what makes this particularly devastating: we've built a system that not only enables trafficking, but then silences survivors when they try to name what happened to them. We rewrite their experiences with sanitized language. We dismiss their trauma as behavioral issues. We pathologize their perfectly rational responses to exploitation. Let me be absolutely clear about what's at stake. When we place children in unsafe homes, when we fail to monitor their well being, when we dismiss their reports of abuse, we aren't just negligent, we become complicit in their exploitation. California's Bureau of Children's Justice reports that over 50,000 children and youth are in California foster care. That's 50,000 opportunities for protection or 50,000 opportunities for exploitation. Large caseloads and bureaucratic gaps hide abuse, exploitation, and trafficking risks, especially for youth with intersectional identities like Simona Bear Cubs. What does this exploitation look like in real terms? It's the 15-year-old girl placed in a home where she's expected to work without pay, cooking and cleaning for an entire household while her education falls by the wayside. It's the 12-year-old boy whose foster parent collects the check but provides no food or clothing, forcing him to fend for himself. It's the 16-year-old Afro-Indigenous girl whose reports of sexual abuse are dismissed as attention seeking behavior while her abuser continues to have access to her. This isn't just neglect, this is trafficking. This is the exploitation. This is the systematic use of vulnerable children for labor, for financial gain, for sexual purposes, all while the system that should protect them looks the other way. The California Attorney General's office has recognized this crisis. They've partnered with statewide organizations to raise awareness and conduct operations targeting human trafficking and sexual exploitation. They've created specialized human trafficking and sexual predator apprehension teams. They've secured prosecutions and sentences that demonstrate accountability is possible. But these efforts, while important, address only the symptoms of a deeper disease. They target individual predators without transforming the systems that make predation possible in the first place. The Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement tracks unaccompanied children released to sponsors, youth who may have been trafficked or smuggled and need trauma informed, monitored placements to prevent further harm. But children with prior abuse or trafficking histories face heightened risk when oversight is weak. Miscounts and data lags obscure needs and delay targeted care. These aren't just statistics, these are children. Children like those Simona Bearcub advocates for, children whose safety depends on our willingness to face uncomfortable truths and take uncomfortable actions. So, what do we do? How do we transform systems that traffic the very children they're meant to protect? Simona Bearcub offers three powerful lessons that could revolutionize our approach. First, center survivor defined safety. Believe survivors' language for what happened to them and build support plans they control. When a child in foster care says, "This doesn't feel safe," believe them. When a survivor says, "What happened to me was trafficking," don't correct their language. Don't minimize their experience. Don't reframe their truth to make yourself more comfortable. Safety isn't defined by our checklists or protocols. Safety is defined by those who have survived its absence. And until we center their expertise, we will continue to create systems that harm rather than heal. Second, replace frontline only activism with sustainable care. Education, mentoring, and creative work are powerful forms of resistance that prevent burnout and expand impact. We can't just rescue children from exploitation. We must build pathways toward healing and wholeness. This means investing in long term solutions. It means creating spaces where survivors can become educators, mentors, and creators. It means recognizing that the most powerful advocates for change are often those who have survived the very systems we seek to transform. Third, design specifically for Afro-Indigenous youth. Intersectional supports must acknowledge we are told we're not Black enough or not Native enough, while still navigating Western systems that mark us as targets. This requires a profound shift in how we think about identity and vulnerability. It means recognizing that children at the intersection of multiple marginalized identities face unique risks and require unique protections. It means acknowledging that our systems often reproduce the very biases and blind spots that make certain children invisible and therefore more vulnerable to exploitation. The Bureau of Children's Justice uses civil rights enforcement, litigation, and monitoring to improve conditions and protect vulnerable youth, creating structural accountability within child serving systems. Court orders and enforcement actions have compelled agencies to address illegal and unsafe conditions, demonstrating that legal leverage can produce system level change for youth safety. This is what accountability looks like. This is what protection requires. This is the bare minimum we owe to every child in our care. If more people and organizations adopted Simona Bearcub's perspective, systems would prioritize survivor defined safety planning, reduce risky placements, and create pathways from frontline activism to sustainable roles like educator, mentor, and creator. Cross agency accountability and transparent data would make it harder for exploitation to hide in foster and youth placements, improving outcomes for Black and Indigenous children. So here's my challenge to you today: believe survivors when they name trafficking, then fund and follow their safety plans. This week, support one survivor led initiative in your community, mentor foster youth, fund an Afro-Indigenous creative healing program, advocate for accountability, measures that protect kids in care. But don't stop there. Question every system that claims to protect children, demand transparency, insist on survivor leadership. Refuse to accept the comfortable lie that our institutions always have children's best interests at heart. Because the truth is, we have built systems that sometimes traffic the very children they claim to protect. And until we have the courage to acknowledge this reality, until we center the voices of survivors like Simona Bearcub, we will continue to be complicit in their exploitation. 50,000 children in California's foster care system alone, 50,000 futures hanging in the balance, 50,000 reasons to disrupt a system that sometimes traffics the very children it claims to protect. The question isn't whether we can afford to transform these systems. The question is whether we can afford not to. Every child deserves safety. Every survivor deserves to be believed. And every system that claims to protect the vulnerable must be held accountable when it becomes the source of their exploitation. This isn't just about policy. This isn't just about programs. This is about power: the power to define your own experience, the power to determine your own safety, the power to design your own healing. That power belongs in the hands of survivors, and it's up to all of us to ensure they have it. Walk out of this room today with this commitment: I will no longer be complicit in systems that traffic children. I will listen to survivors. I will follow their lead. I will demand accountability. And I will not rest until every child is truly safe, not just on paper, not just in theory, but in reality. Because the most dangerous trafficking isn't happening in the shadows. It's happening in plain sight within the very systems we've built to protect our most vulnerable children. The time for comfortable lies is over. The time for uncomfortable action is now.